Welcome to the Scalable Marketing Machine Podcast, where serious founders like you learn how to stop guessing and start growing with marketing that actually moves the needle. I'm your host, Victoria Hajar, fractional CMO, strategist, and founder of Ugly Ventures, where we provide growing businesses with the marketing leadership they need or help up-level the team they already have. Every week, we'll break down real-world strategies for building marketing operations that scale, leading high-performing teams, and aligning your brand and growth plan with your business goals. Because marketing should fuel your business, not frustrate it. Let's get into it. Okay, founders, this is the episode I wish someone had handed me years ago. I'm joined by the brilliant Danielle Hendon from Four Corners CFO for a real deal conversation about how your financial decisions make or break your marketing strategy. Danielle is one of those rare experts who can take a topic like business finances, something most entrepreneurs avoid, and make it feel empowering, clear, and exciting. She brings the tough love and deep insights every scaling founder needs. We talk about why so many founders ignore their numbers until they're in a full-blown panic, how marketing chaos drains your cash without you even realizing it, and what it actually looks like to align your spending with growth. So whether you've been flying blind or just want to tighten up your systems, this episode is an invitation to stop guessing and start leading with clarity. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Profit or Panic workshop, where we're going to be digging into how financial clarity can fuel smarter marketing decisions. So this was really born out of a deep desire to understand, for all of you, to give an understanding of what is the connection between the financial piece of business and the marketing piece of business. And so Danielle and I have partnered up to sort of give you a clear idea on how these two functions and departments of your business can work together, because frankly, it's a piece that's missing in a lot of people's businesses, and it's such an important piece of the equation. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to pass the mic over to Danielle to introduce yourself, and then I'll share a little bit more about me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Hendon. So I founded Four Corners CFO with an effort to be different. And I'm sure a lot of you listening have a similar passion, in the sense that we all want to be the pebble in the pond, create the ripples. We want to do something that is different and impactful. And excuse me, part of the way that I do that with Four Corners is by being the approachable accountant. There is no dumb question. There is nothing that we are going to say that won't make sense. And if it does, I really want somebody to tell me it doesn't make sense, because if it doesn't make sense to you, you can't use it. And our whole goal is that you can use this information to build livelihoods, legacies, and improve your own personal financial situation.
Awesome. Awesome. So awesome. Okay. And I am Victoria Hajar. I am a fractional CMO, Chief Marketing Officer for growth startups and scale-ups. I focus on helping B2B entrepreneurs to scale their marketing through optimizing marketing strategies. My sweet spot and my team's sweet spot is to help strategize, organize, and systemize your marketing to build what I like to call scalable marketing machines, right? So before we can really use marketing as a huge growth lever in our business, we need to be able to have clear systems that we can test, iterate, and improve upon. And if we can't really measure where we are against where we want to go, it's very hard to get there. And why this workshop is so important is because oftentimes, in order to get to that next level, we have to make some investments, right? But I think the question becomes, how do we know if we can invest? What do we invest on? So that's a lot of the stuff that we're going to be digging into in today's workshop. So the point of today's workshop is scaling smart, right? How we can use those financial foundations that Danielle's going to be walking us through to build this scalable marketing machine, so we can really use marketing to leverage marketing to grow our revenue. So here's some of the things we're going to cover. We're going to be going through, some common sort of disconnects between the finance and the marketing, right? And why that could be problematic. We're going to give you some tools to gain clarity on your, where you are in your financial side, where you are on the marketing side. And then we're going to talk to you about how we can really align these two departments to align for driving growth. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. Okay, so if we want to start a little bit on the financial side, right? Why the chaos of the financial side may be costing you more than you expect.
And I'm going to be honest and call out the elephant in the room. And half of you probably don't want to start with the financial side because it is not always easy to face the numbers, but it is absolutely necessary, especially in a year like this one, that you are looking at your numbers. The uncertainty and the anxiety that you feel is so much worse than just knowing what they look like. When you are not certain about your numbers, you are stressed out, you're stalled, you're making quick reactive decisions. You are doing things like cutting marketing without realizing that marketing was actually bringing in clients and clients bring in money. So maybe that's not where we want to cut. You may not know what your ROI is on all of your different expenses. We go through an analysis with our clients where we literally sit down and we look at everything they spend money on. And we want to know, what does it give you in time, money, or both? And if it's not doing those things, it's not a good investment in your business. That doesn't mean we don't all have things we do because they're required, or what I like to call a personal perk, your fun little tax decisions. But if it's an investment in the business and it's not giving you time, money, or both, it's not a very good investment. And if you are in a position right now where you're starting to feel the crunch, cash flow feels tight, the world feels like chaos, I don't care which side of the aisle you are on, volatility is volatility. Nobody knows what's coming in the future. None of us have a magic 8-ball. And in that environment, you might be seeing your sales slow down. We have clients that are seeing sales come in slower. The turnover time to get a sale is taking longer. Everybody's taking longer to make decisions in this market. And when that happens, because it's taking longer and your expenses are still coming in, cash gets tighter. And one of my absolute favorite ways to solve a cash flow problem is to get a line of credit. If you don't know what a line of credit is, it's basically a loan that you can dip into and out of as much as you need from the bank. I always recommend credit unions over big banks. They're easier to get them with. They're not going to be the greatest rates right now. I'm just going to be totally honest and say that, but they will be better than your credit card. And the other thing I always want to point out is they are going to give you the space and the grace to make the best decision in your business. If cash starts to feel tight, and it may not feel tight right now, if you are listening to this and you're like, cash is no problem, I still want you to get a line of credit. Life happens when cash does feel tight, because it will at some point in the business. You are going to reach for anything and everything you can to put money in the bank account. And those are not the best decisions for your business. They're not the best short or long-term decisions. They might actually cost you money, but because you see money going into the bank account, it feels like the decision you need to make. Having a line of credit or a source of savings, if you've been saving up, that allows you time and runway to pivot your marketing strategies, pivot your business, pivot your sales, is what you need to survive the unknown.
That is such good advice. And I think so many founders that I've talked to, over the years, we've had these experiences where, and especially as women, right? And then, I mean, not just women, I think most founders feel this way, right? We have such an instinct where we want to take care of our people. So how many times has it been where we are making payroll and then we don't pay ourselves, right?
Wow.
Those are I think that has to be a rite of passage for almost any business owner as you're coming up, is to really understand cash. And actually for me in my business, I remember the moment where I understood, and I did everything right. Like I had a cash reserve that I could last for X amount of months and still pay, right? I had that runway. And when the economy turned like a couple of years ago, when things were getting really bad, like around COVID, I came to a point where it was like I burned up my cash reserves. And there were a couple months where I was paying just my staff and team, and I wasn't taking pay for a while. And honestly, like that cash line of credit, because I knew that things were going to get better, I knew that they were going to turn around. And I ended up leveraging my line of credit for my credit card. And what you say is so, so smart, because it's like if you can get, I don't know what percentages we could, what percentages could we be looking for? Because credit cards are upwards of 25 to 30%. So for
I
a
have
local
seen
credit
line of
union,
credits going with a credit union. You can get, usually I would say right now you're somewhere between 8 and 15.
and that's incredible. That's incredible, right? Even just to help again, like with, when economies slow down, I also see that our clients will pay slower, right? And
Yes.
oftentimes it's just like to be able to float, right? That moment, right, between things clear and then you can pay things off, that it can be incredibly helpful, and you want to make sure that that's as low as possible. But the other staggering thing I want to double click on is like 82% of small businesses fail due to cash flow issues.
Wild. I mean, cash is king. Let's be honest. We
Yeah.
can help our clients build a budget all day long. If you don't have money in the bank account, you can't pay the bills. And I want to pivot or lean off of something you said, Victoria, where if you aren't paying yourself because you're paying everybody else, you still have bills to pay at home.
Hmm.
And especially this year, and with what everyone's saying, those bills are getting more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And so our cost, I mean, really the cost of not having a cushion, like of course we all should be working towards like, and how many months do you suggest people kind of save up, right? And honestly, this can feel very aspirational for a lot of people that are just kind of scraping by. That's why working with someone with you like you is so important to like, many people, if I ask them like, well, what is your budget? Like, what's your operational budget, right? How
Mhm.
much, what percentage of your revenue are you dedicating to your operations, and what portion of that are you dedicating to, and this, we're getting into this now, to growth,
Yep.
right? To ads or to your outbound marketing stuff. Like, what is the plan around that? Um, and yes, we need X amount of months. So what would you suggest people are really working towards in terms of how much runway they save up for themselves?
I say 3 months, but with the idea that if things really start to turn, they don't go from 100 to zero right away. Back to you've got to be looking at the numbers so you can notice when things start to turn away from what you want them to be,
Mhm.
because you need that 3 months to be agile and adaptable and pivot. And if you're doing that in the 3 months, it's going to be plenty. If you are not doing that, then in a worst case scenario with that 3 months cushion, you have time to figure out how to downsize. What do we not need? Who do we have to pay? What needs to happen on the other side of it?
And that's so hard. And let me tell you, the really understanding like the financial health of your business is going to be that leading indicator. So it's going to make things a lot easier, right? If you have to cut someone's pay, if you have to let someone go, you'd rather do it when you could pay them a month to look for something else, right? Like, oh, I give you a month, or I'm going to give you this last month so you can get set up on your feet, rather than, oh shit, I don't have any money in my account to pay this
Well,
person.
yeah, I mean, as small business owners, the biggest benefit we give our people is we see them as people.
Mm, yeah. Exactly. And oftentimes, again, like and it's not just women, I said before, but many of us business owners, like we take a huge responsibility for the people that we employ, right? The people
Yeah.
that work with us. We think about their families and all of that stuff, oftentimes, sometimes before our own. And if we want to do it the right way, where it's a little bit easier, and we're all going to have to make these decisions, right, of cutting back or letting people go. Again, the data, like if you're watching those numbers, your P&L will tell you, right, if your profitability is going down, if your cash reserves are going down, like but it takes the practice of looking at it, right? Which is a
And
huge
being willing to dig deeper, because I would never want you to cut your revenue generating person.
Mm.
If you have someone more administrative that is less functional in a certain time period, because then you just cut revenue along with their cost, and that is absolutely not the way we want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And a whole other topic though is, and I often talk about, how everyone in your business should have a tie to revenue, right?
Yes.
Especially in small businesses. And this is something that I've experienced firsthand that's really, really painful, is where you have maybe bigger salaries that are not directly contributing to your revenue. And maybe they are more administrative, a more ops and supportive role. But to be honest, like, especially as you're growing and scaling, like, it sometimes is a hard look to really understand, like, can I afford that right now?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there's a lot of ways that we can get things done in our business, especially with AI, that's going to be more cost effective. But we need to look at reality. So, all right. So that's kind of the cost of chaos on the finance side. But I want to talk a little bit about, marketing under pressure, right? Because we want marketing to perform for us. We want marketing to have that ROI. We want to get those leads. And one of the things I can say is, the way that we really hedge our bets for marketing, right? So we really can have a clear understanding of, money in, money out, is marketing needs to be a extremely consistent presence in your business. And a lot of times I come, up to founders that are looking at, doing these like Hail Mary kind of moves in marketing in order to like save the business, in order to get the opportunities. And one of the things I say is the momentum, the consistency, like when you're setting up the pipelines in your business, you have to take a long-term look, a long-term attitude to all of the things that you're doing in marketing. And so this is where you don't want to get to a point where you have no pipeline, where your revenue is drying up, and you just think that, marketing in 1 month or 2 months or even 1 quarter can turn everything around. And this is where 82% of those businesses fail because of cash flow. Well, this is wise, because they're not setting up long-term marketing programs that have consistent production. And we look at sort of, okay, something's not working. So we kind of turn it off and turn on something and turn off and turn on something. And this is just the beginning of the end. Because again, the results are in the consistency. So for example, it's like when we're looking at, understanding what's working and what's not working, we want to have a system where we can analyze that. So just like in the market and the financial side, maybe that's our P&L that we're looking at, right? And that we're kind of understanding, what is our runway? Are we dipping into our runway? These are these indicators of the health of our financial health of our business. Alternatively, we should be having similar systems, right? No one thinks of creating their P&L as like, I'll just look at, I'll put all these numbers together and look at it and I'll get all the answers within like a month or two. We understand that that's like a long-term practice you have to have in your business. Setting up your marketing systems and understanding, right, the health of each of your marketing activities is exactly like how we should be looking at the financial piece, right? We want to understand, okay, where are our leads coming from, right? At what rate are our leads converting into paying customers? What are some of the more beneficial lead channels that are actually converting better than others? And we want to make sure that we have a lot of things going, like a lot of our hands in different honeypots, to make sure that we're not relying on one source for leads, okay? And so this is where, again, making those long-term investments and what this could look like, right? What could this look like? Let's say for a service-based business, a lot of service-based businesses, like, Danielle and I were service-based business, right? So, we invest in our presence in LinkedIn, right? That's both of us are double down on a strategy there. I'm sure Danielle are the same. I also invest in masterminds and communities, right? And this is an expense to pay for. And I can tell you, one of the, there can be times where, you get more production out of LinkedIn and more leads out of LinkedIn. There could be times where you get great leads out of communities you're a part of, right after a conference or something where things are fresh, but they ebb and flow. So one way to take the pressure off of marketing is to make sure that you have different lead channels that are set up, that are constantly bringing in leads from many different sources. This is how we kind of diversify our lead generation channels, and also need to understand, how do we invest in getting those leads? And again, they're often consistency over time. So a good example is like, if you are part of networking events or paid masterminds or communities, right? Oftentimes it's not just showing up once to these events, because the real juice, the real opportunities come from consistency, right? People seeing your face over and over and over again, and knowing you're the person to go for financial help. You're the person to go for marketing help. And then as you build trust and recognition in that community, more leads tend to come, right? And they're higher converting leads because there's that sense of trust. But the problem becomes is, oftentimes it's hard to just make a big investment, right? If you don't already have proof of something working. We want to use our investment dollars, right? If we're saying, hey, I really want to invest in getting more leads in marketing, we first have to understand what's working, because we want to use investment dollars in our marketing to put fuel on a fire, but the fire already has to be burning. So oftentimes a huge mistake I see a lot of founders make is they just want to pour a lot of fuel on a fire that doesn't exist. So I'm just going to take this investment. I'm going to take $10,000 and I'm going to start running ads. But you've never run ads before. You don't have any, you're nodding because I'm sure you've seen this a lot, right? And then you take the investment and the money disappears and you have nothing to show for it, because you're not investing money on a proven channel already. You're trying to open up a channel with money. And this is the worst mistake you could make with your money, because you want to say, okay, where's some organic, or you want to have a tested something, right? So let's say you're really invested in LinkedIn, right? You want to get momentum on LinkedIn and say, okay, I understand how to create organic social posts that get engagement and get likes and shares and things like that. And if you understand how to do that, well, then it's really smart to say, well, let me take that stuff that's already working and I'll turn it into an ad, because I know that it works in an organic way. Okay, so now we'll start testing with ads, and we're not just going to put, $10,000 into opening up an ad channel in the first month. We're going to make consistent investments, and we're going to test out audiences. Like, we need to walk before we run. But what happens is if you are under pressure, you're going to make poor decisions. And how do you hedge against that is by understanding where you are financially, right? Because you can.
Well, and I would pivot the other side of it. The people that are like, oh my gosh, I don't have the money for this. And they are doing what we would call the bootstrap marketing, the referral marketing, the networking, the things that feel free. But I'm going to argue to anybody watching this, your time is your money. These things are not free. And one of the biggest changes I had to make in my business from a marketing perspective was taking on those traditional elements that allow the business to have marketing that isn't just Danielle.
And that also, again, those are investments, because you can certainly clone yourself in ways by getting the right help. But those are these small investments. And you want to make sure, again, like, you never want to be in a position where you're close to running out of money and you're just desperately trying to figure out what growth levers you can pull to get money in the door ASAP. What you want to be doing is investing wisely in the marketing activities you are taking part in. And again, consistency over time. So a really great example here. Let's say networking and referrals is your biggest channel, right? And what I see oftentimes, and this is where that feast or famine cycle comes into play, where it's like, let's say you got, 3-4 projects in one quarter that you're onboarding big projects, right? And you kind of turn your attention away from networking and keeping up with your referrals, right? And what may end up happening is your pipeline dries up a little bit because you're not keeping up with all those things because you're busy. And let me tell you, you could either be busy serving clients or busy executing a project or
life.
Or life, right? And that's where say, okay, huge mistakes. People are like, oh, I'll just hire someone, and people will promise you, oh, we'll get your leads, we'll get you, 4 or 10 or 50 or whatever booked sales calls in a month. And they say, oh, within 30 days. And let me tell you, those strategies, if you're trying to get a call setter in or someone to generate leads, I can tell you from behind the scenes, those often take at least 90 days to stand up on their legs, at least 90 days before you start seeing some activity. I think even 6 months before you really start seeing consistent leads coming through a new channel. So you have to plan for that. And that's why having a good handle on your money is so important. So let's go into, how can we kind of diagnose whether we have some of these disconnects in our business? Okay. Let's talk. I think we can both rap about this a little bit, but how many of us are really planning our marketing? How many of us are actually planning a marketing budget and even talking at all to anyone that has a financial say in our business?
And I would pivot for our clients that are more financially set. I want to know how many are actually planning marketing.
Yeah.
Like, do you have a marketing plan? Because both are foundational to your business.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that so many business issues can be tied back to the idea of working in silos. So I'm a huge proponent of, getting your team together. And yeah, maybe your financial people don't need to be in every, a weekly meeting with the marketing. But one of the things that I've seen done with great success is having okay, if you're lucky enough to have a full leadership team meeting where leadership, so heads of sales, heads of marketing, heads of finance, this was such a great company that I worked in as a fractional CMO. He brought us all together where the CFO would walk us through the forecast, right? And sort of the results from the previous month, understanding, where we are against our targets from a revenue perspective, from a churn perspective, from a accounts receivable perspective, all of the things. And it gave us all such a clear understanding of where we are and where we need to be. Those sort of things are very rare. So here's an idea, Danielle, at the very basic piece of it. What do you think is a elementary thing that the financial side can do to help shed some light on the financial health of a company for a marketing or for the sales department without getting too in the weeds? Do you have some suggestions on key metrics that might be interesting to share?
My favorite metric, and the one that we focus on with all of our clients, so it's not an individual metric, and this is not going to sound like a ratio you've ever heard, is looking at the budget to the actuals. Because one of the first questions I ask all of our clients is, what does your pipeline look like? I can budget all day long what I think your revenue is going to be based on what you've done. But if your pipeline is drying up, I need to change our budget. And if you're waiting for me to see it in the numbers, we waited too long. If I have to see sales drop, that means the pipeline started drying up months ago.
Yeah. I think another really useful metric to keep track of for finance and marketing to align on is the client acquisition cost. So oftentimes this is in such silos that the marketing team will look at client acquisition cost from the angle of, here's how much money we spent to acquire the client from a marketing perspective. So this will say normally this is just how much are we spending on ads? How many deals are we closing? And we're just looking at money spent on ads versus how much, and versus how many people are converting. What's the problem though? is that from an operational perspective, if you look at how much it takes to serve the client, right? And this is a part of finance that I know a lot of people don't pay attention to. But it's like, what are your software costs? What is your customer service costs, right? Does that number make sense? So oftentimes a marketer, the marketing head will be charged with sort of creating some goals for the client acquisition costs. But if we don't have input from the finance, we're just like pulling that out of our butts. We don't really know how much money we could spend to acquire the client. We can understand the lifetime value of a client, but I need to make sure that even lifetime value versus how much money it costs to serve them even makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of businesses that don't know that.
Well, and this leads a little bit into our next slide, but if you're looking just at dollars and not percentages, you're losing sight of the pie, the picture. If you're just looking at client acquisition cost as, I don't know, $10,000 for this client, and it's a lifetime value of 100, great. But like you said, what's the profit margin? How much money are we spending just to serve this client? How much of that lifetime value as a percentage is the client acquisition cost? So when we look at revenue and we look at marketing costs, we don't look so much at the client acquisition as we do that return on investment. I want to see revenue after we've done all of our cost of goods sold and paid all our people at a certain percentage and a certain, I'm going to say 3x. I like to see 3x from marketing to what's actually getting back on the books.
Yeah. And again, a lot of times us marketing teams just don't have insight into what that really is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we're using finance, because I think a lot of us, again, many of us as founders, finance is just totally reactionary. So the only interface we have with our financials is when we're doing the monthly books, which is a lagging metric, right? It's like, it's already done. You can't do anything about it, right? We're either doing our books at the end of the month or we're doing our taxes at the end of the year. And that's like really the only time we're looking at our finances. But I think our goal of this whole talk is that like making the financial piece an active part of your strategy, right? And building your strategy, that's going to set you up for success, and it's going to save you from running out of money. You will never run out of money as long as you know where you really are. And that's where the data, right? The lack of data and the lack of sharing will give you poor decision making. The reverse is true, right? If we see the data on both the sides, so we know from a business perspective what numbers make sense, then we can create the marketing plan based on those numbers. I can't tell you how many businesses I've been into where they hire me and my team as the fractional marketing director, fractional chief marketing officer, and they say, okay, make the marketing budget. And I'm given no insights on how much it costs.
Limits.
Right. They're just like, oh, what do you need to be successful? I'm like, well, the point, I mean, the reality is that you can actually you can make a great marketing strategy based on any marketing budget, right? There's so many ways we can get creative. The problem is that we just have no real insights into, well, how much is the business really doing? How much can we afford to spend on marketing? And if you're not understanding how much you can afford to spend on marketing, the marketing is going to go many ways. It's just that we try to do things as cheap as possible. And that doesn't get us results oftentimes, right? One of the things that and this may be in a later slide, but one of the things I always really guide folks on is that, listen, we need to cover the basics of marketing, and then we need to make strategic investments. There are going to be some pieces of your marketing that you need to make bigger investments and you need to spend a little bit more money on. And it's not about always doing things the cheapest, because that's not oftentimes going to get you the results. So anyway, data is very, very important in order to help us understand all of that stuff. So walk us through this financial clarity framework a little bit that can help us understand how we can use our finances to make better marketing decisions.
So at Four Corners, we use what I call your Reveal Your Path to Profit framework. All the letters stand for their own little fancy thing that you can learn more about on our website if you really want to. But what I want to focus on today with marketing in mind is when you are looking at your books and your revenue, 90% of our clients come to us with like one, maybe two income lines. That's it. They have two income lines. Everything goes into sales. It's all sales, but it's not all the same. You have more than one revenue stream in your business, and it is absolutely imperative for your marketing specifically that you know which of those is the most profitable, because without doing anything different financially, you can shift your marketing focus from one of your least profitable to your most profitable products and immediately sell the same number of things, but you're selling the profitable thing and you're increasing your bottom line.
That is so good. Can I tell you, I've been in a workshop where a lot of founders have gone through just kind of that analysis. And I can tell you, out of like a group of like 70 women, I mean, like 90% of the women, they had no idea which one of their products or services were more or less profitable. Like it was,
especially if you're service-based, because service-based businesses throw their biggest cost, which is people, down into the operating expenses. They don't keep them up with their cost of goods sold. So you don't even have a clear picture on your financials of what profit really is. Revenue looks like profit, but it's not.
That's so true. That's so true.
So the other really key piece with marketing in mind so our framework, like I said, goes through 6 parts. We reveal that path to profit through your balance sheet, your revenue. The next piece is your expense. And we've talked a lot about marketing as an expense. And I want you to remember that your time is an equal part of that expense if you're not paying somebody else to help you. So expense and ROI are really important, and making sure that when you are making those investments, you're getting that ROI, that return on investment. And like we said just a second ago, I aim for like 3x when we're working with a client. I want to see at least 3 times that expense returned from that investment. And that tells me that what we're doing is working. I don't get into the nitty-gritty of what it's working on or where it's working, but I want to see that it's working. And I want to see that it's working from a profit perspective, not a sales perspective. I want it to be a profitable decision. And then when we know what your revenue and your expenses are, we've talked a little bit about cash flow. Anybody that's going to build you a cash flow forecast or give you any kind of budget numbers without actually sitting down and building a budget is honestly just giving you trends. Anybody can pull your reports and give you trends. But what we do for our clients and what we recommend people do is what we call bottom-up budgeting, where you actually go in and you're like, okay, we're going to spend this much on LinkedIn. We're going to spend this much on ads. We're going to spend this much on XYZ. I'm going to go spend $200 on my cell phone, $100 on the website, all of those different pieces. And you put every single one of them into your budget and then roll it up to a total for the account so that you know exactly what's in there. Because the magic financially that happens, and Victoria mentioned this with some of her larger clients, is when you compare that budget to the actuals and you go, hey, wait a minute, because, and you might be surprised when I say this, the goal of a budget isn't actually to hit the budget. The goal of a budget is to understand why we're not hitting the budget. If we spent more on marketing and it 10x'd our profit, heck yeah, let's spend more on marketing. I'm going to go change the budget.
Yeah.
And then once you know what your budget really is, and you can really hone in on that, to create cash flow is just applying timing. And I guarantee everybody listening has a credit card. If you're spending most of your business expenses on the credit card, what hits your P&L this month hits your bank account next month. Cash flow is just a matter of timing.
Yeah, that is such a good point. But I want to go back to something that you said. This is so powerful, especially for anyone that feels not that connected to the data, doesn't love looking at the data. I think a lot of folks that don't like looking at the data, and this was me for so many years, and I don't know where this psychology of this comes from, but I feel like some of us think that looking at the data, actuals versus goals, right? Budget versus actuals, right? Goals versus actuals, is that, again, the aim is not to hit it perfectly. The aim is not, you don't have to hit the goals or not. It's a signal to us to understand what's going on. And I think many of us feel like, oh, if we don't hit the goals, we're doing something wrong.
You make it a personal judgment.
Exactly. Like, oh, if I didn't get the leads, like I suck, no one likes my stuff. Or if I didn't close those sales, my sales team stinks and everyone's going to get fired. And that's why everyone gets nervous about looking at the metrics. So they think that it's a personal judgment on them, where it's absolutely not. Those numbers are not supposed to be set in stone. We're supposed to.
We change them every month.
All the time. We need to understand what's actually happening in our business, right? And I think that it is helpful to understand benchmarks. That's really, and those benchmarks should be, sometimes maybe they're aspirational if you're very far from them, but we also need to understand, like, in what areas are we surpassing our goals? Because then we're saying, okay, maybe we can move the goalposts a little bit higher, right? And push ourselves a little bit more. So our data, like looking at the metrics in our business and the results in our business versus what we're planning, is just a barometer of, what do we have to learn more about or adjust or do? Or again, it helps us ask better questions.
It tells the story.
Yeah, tells the story. And I love the idea of looking at these numbers with the team, because when you are really off on your metrics, it's not a time to like get rid of your team or anything. It's the time to really get creative about saying, like, hey, we are wildly over budget. How could we get the same results or better and cut the budget in half? These are these big questions that we ask her. Or we say, like, hey, we didn't get enough leads. Why? Like, oh God, no one's coming from our socials. Like, what's the deal there? How could we and we learn, and that gets us on the path of learning and getting better. But if we're never looking at these numbers, we're missing all these opportunities for growth.
Why is the magic word right there. It's when you ask why, you really get to tell a story. It's not just numbers on the paper. And if you are the kind of person that puts your head in the sand because it all overwhelms you, I promise you there is a story behind it. It's almost like learning another language, and that can be hard, but it tells the story of your business, and it tells it across all areas of your business.
Absolutely. I love that. So how do we sort of set up, right? So we understand a little bit about the numbers we should be looking at on the financial side, right? And we talked about that. But it's sort of like, how can we set up some systems on the marketing side so we can really take a look at what numbers are performing or underperforming? We need to have a system in place for measuring the performance in order to understand where we are. And for me, that all starts with what I call the 24/7 marketing flywheel. So the 24/7 marketing flywheel is essentially your marketing strategy. This is how I think of marketing strategy, which is really mimicking the client journey, right? We need to have some strategic points in our marketing strategy. And I've got tons of free resources about how to build your 24/7 marketing flywheel, which we all have great links for you at the end of the workshop. But essentially, you want to set up your marketing system, right? All of these layers of your marketing system. How are you attracting new clients? How are we converting them into paying customers? How are we making them happy customers so they give us recommendations and testimonials? We set up this system, and then we build out like a scorecard that reflects these different stages. This is the easiest way that I've been able to figure out, what's working and what's not working. We want our marketing metrics to mirror the strategy that we are actually executing on. Because if we can understand which stage of our marketing strategy, what piece of our marketing strategy is underperforming, then we can ask those great juicy questions, which is going to lead us to learning and growth, right? And it takes the pain of looking at those numbers sometimes, that those numbers are way off what we wanted them to be, in order to be that catalyst for learning and growth, right? And we want to, so setting up your a clear marketing strategy is the basis for this. Because if you don't have a thought out strategy where you understand what you're doing for each part of the client journey, then you don't have any idea really like how you kind of attract and convert folks. And you need to understand how you attract and convert folks in order to measure it and understand what's working or it's not working. And when we're measuring all of these things, we have a clear objective in mind. We want to be understanding what our client acquisition cost is, and having insights from the finance department is so important, right? And our goal should always be, how can we get the most amount of customers for the least amount of money? That's sort of our overarching goal when it comes to marrying the financials and the marketing, right? We want our client acquisition cost to be, we want to have that 3x. 3x is that magic number, right? In our profitability and in our client acquisition costs and how much we're spending to get our clients. So the way we do this is setting up a system and then building out some key metrics to reflect that. Now, if we were to say, what are like the top 2 or 3 metrics that you should be measuring for your marketing, right? There's beautiful, like you can have a very, big and comprehensive marketing scorecard in your marketing data. You can have a very complicated P&L. And I've talked to plenty of founders that have these beautifully complex, worksheets, and then they don't ever look at them. Right? So you have to actually build out something that you're going to look at. So for marketing, like if you're like, I don't track anything in marketing, I want you to look at a couple North Star metrics that I like to put it, right? Our North Star metrics are, how many leads are we getting each and every week, right? And we want to put some kind of target on that, right? We need to understand how many leads are coming in. We need to understand how many opportunities we're getting. So let's say that means we are a service-based business. How many sales calls are we getting to? If we are a product-based business, how many folks are getting to that checkout, right? How many people are getting to that buying page? And then the third is, how many sales are we actually making? With these 3 things, we can learn a ton. Because if we are not getting enough sales, we can look at either our conversion rates, like the amount of opportunities we're getting, like people are getting to the checkout page and they're just not completing it, right? Or they're getting on the sales call and they're just not buying from you. That's going to give us a lot of information on that process. Or those numbers are great, we're just not getting enough people in the tab. We're not getting enough leads. And we need to track those metrics so we understand what is the problem we're trying to solve for. And if we don't have a clear understanding of where's the breakdown, then we're not going to be able to direct our either investment or our time or our energy to fixing the problem, because we won't know what the problem is.
And I'm going to double down on that and say that is the exact same information your financial person needs to adjust your budget. It becomes that leading metric that tells us if we're not getting the sales that we think we're going to get next month.
Right.
I could tell you right now, if I knew what your pipeline looked like, those leads and those conversions compared to the last 12 months, if you're going to get the number that we think we're going to get in sales.
Right. And if we're having that open conversation and things are looking like they're leaning out or whatever, there's so much more that we can do to save money, maybe on the operational side, cut some things out, move them. There's a lot of creativity. Again, the problem will be the conduit for creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, anything's impossible. It's not like you have to throw in the towel if things are going sideways. No, there's so many levers that you can pull to save a little money, or to use a credit line or something like that that's going to help you get through those times where you're adjusting, right? Because again, marketing is consistency. So let's say your pipeline's dried up. Well, maybe it's going to take 3 months or so to rev it back up again. Maybe you got to get yourself out to conferences. You got to invest in going to, Dallas for this conference, or you need to go to New York for this thing, or to meet X, Y, and Z for this event. Or you need to start paying someone to consistently be trying to set up calls for you. We know that it's going to take a couple months to start rolling, but we can plan for it, right? Mm-hmm. If we have that insight, right? So here's the question, right? Are you set up to scale? Are you set up for success? These are 3 easy things that you can be implementing into your business starting this month to help make sure that you are well positioned to grow and scale without the stress, right? So we want to ask you, are you reviewing your marketing spend quarterly, right? And at the same time, are you reviewing your forecasting? Are you even making forecasting properly, right? Are you looking at your financials quarterly? That's going to give you a lot of insights on what you can be spending money on, right? And if you need to lean out or if we need to get creative, right? The next thing is your marketing team. Are they clear on what their budget constraints are? Are they clear on what their budget allowance is, right? Or are we just like haphazardly investing in things? I personally have made this mistake and ran into a lot of trouble because in the moments where things are feeling like they're jiving and that there's a lot of money in the bank and they're like, oh, you see these so much money in your business account, then you start making these investments. And I've gotten definitely caught with my pants down being like so excited. I'm going to invest in this coach and this mastermind and I'm going to this event and this and that. And then a couple of months down the line, I just didn't plan for those things. Right. And then I, ended up getting into a tight spot. So I don't want that to happen to anyone else. And then tracking the ROI on everything that you're doing for marketing, right? Are we at that 3x? And that's at the marketing side. But then from the financial side, right? Is there any kind of nuance to any of these check marks that you would say from the financial perspective?
I think you hit on a lot of it. It's checking in on your numbers. And I would actually argue for most small businesses, once a month, even if it's just with your bookkeeper, you should have eyes on your numbers at least once a month. Things change so fast in small business that you've got to stay up with it. And then when it comes to budget constraints, I love what you were saying earlier, Victoria, with that client acquisition cost. I think it's absolutely crucial that the finance side communicate back with the marketing side of like, hey, this is our profit margin. You need to know your profit margins so you know how much money's left to wiggle on. Because if you're not getting the 3x on that profit margin and that marketing expense, it's okay, how can we get creative in marketing? Or maybe we need to raise our rates. Maybe it's a financial problem, not a marketing problem.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that because I think, oftentimes we can, we think maybe we have a sales problem, for example, right? But oftentimes if the back end is not tied together and there's a lot of bleeding expenses, just to kind of like you're bleeding your costs on the back end, there's some simple readjustment and things that you can do when you have proper oversight that could actually just increase the financial health of your business overall without having to make a tons more sales, right?
You can leave sales completely static and change that profit number easily.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay, so that is really good. So wrapping up, we have a couple ways, right? If you're going through all of this and you're like, I feel like a mess and all of these things. So both Danielle and I are happy to pop on a free call with you and to really do a financial or marketing audit. So we can kind of go through where you are, where you need to be, what are some of the next steps? Anything you want to add on your audit side of what you do?
Honestly, what I was aiming for with this with you guys is really honing in on that revenue. I feel like one of the biggest problems business owners have is not knowing what profit margins are and what their revenue streams are. And you can't begin to start developing a marketing plan if you don't know what that is.
100%. And for me, if you want to get some time with me, we were going to go through auditing your marketing system. So this is like looking at this 24/7 marketing flywheel, which are the 6 stages that I use to create marketing strategy and understanding, what are you doing for the client journey? What's maybe missing in this journey? Where are some leaks in your funnel? We can really understand what you need to do to optimize those marketing systems. Again, so you can measure it properly and understand, where you need to invest some time, energy, and attention. So this is kind of like a free call. This is about 30 minutes that we do with you for free, and we kind of set you on the right path. Another option, though, is that we do a VIP day. So it's going to be like a clarity, give you strategy, the clarity that you need. We'll leave you with a 90-day roadmap, all of that stuff. So it's going to be like 2 hours, like an hour with each of us to really dig in and get you your plan. Usually we charge at $9.97 for that. But if you book after watching this recording or after watching this presentation, we'll give you 50% off for just like acting quickly and all that stuff. So all of those details, we will follow up over email, and you'll have the link if you want to go ahead and book that, or if you want to book the free audit, we'll have the links to that as well. And so that's really going to wrap up our session. And we would say, definitely, these are both our handles on Instagram. So if you want to send DMs on Instagram, or you can find either of us on LinkedIn, we like to spend time on LinkedIn as well. Send us some DMs, and we can answer any questions that you may have on, assessing the financial health or the productive health of your marketing, or the financial health of your finances of your business. And we're happy to talk about that more with you over DM. So thank you so much for joining us today. Danielle, any last words?
My last word that I give on any podcast, presentation, webinar, anything I do is make sure that you are prioritizing your profit and prioritizing you in your business. Because like Victoria said, it's so easy for us to pay everyone else and forget about ourselves. And if all you do is set aside 1% to take care of you, it's starting a habit that will create that self-care in your business.
Absolutely. Profit equals peace, right? I love that. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And we hope to connect with you guys on DM or see you in one of those sessions.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for sticking around with me and listening all the way to the end. I really appreciate you as an audience member, and I hope that you found this helpful. If you did like this episode, it would mean so much to me if you subscribed, if you rate and review this podcast. It helps other people know that this podcast has something worth saying. It also would be super awesome if you could take a screenshot and share on Instagram and tag me at Ugly Ventures, UGLI Ventures, VENTURES. I am always so appreciative to hear from you, and I hope to see you back here next week